She said, marriage? God. No, he was basically a charity case when I met him, while laughing with her friends as my name became a joke in my own home. I feel trapped in my relationship with my girlfriend because I owe her everything. But I am starting to think she is taking advantage of that 3 years ago. I was in the darkest period of my life. I had been laid off from my engineering job during company downsizing, and while I was job hunting, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. The medical bills were crushing, especially without health insurance. I was burning through my savings, couldn't afford my insulin, and was basically watching my life fall apart. That is when I met Camille. We matched on a dating app, and I was honest about my situation from the beginning. I expected her to run. What woman wants to date an unemployed guy with a chronic illness who can barely afford his medication? But Camille surprised me. Everyone goes through rough patches, she said. What matters is how you handle them, and whether you are working to improve things. She stuck by me through everything. When I couldn't afford my insulin, she would drive me to different pharmacies to find discount programs. When I was too depressed to leave my apartment, she would bring groceries and cook for me. When I had a diabetic emergency and ended up in the ER, she was there holding my hand while I worried about the hospital bills. The most incredible thing she did was loan me $8,000 to cover medical expenses and basic living costs while I got back on my feet. She didn't ask for a contract or payment plan. She just said, "Pay me back when you can." Camille literally saved my life, both physically and emotionally. I don't think I would have survived that period without her support. I finally found a new job about 6 months after we started dating, and things began improving. I was able to get health insurance, afford my medications, and start rebuilding my savings. The first thing I did was pay Camille back every penny she had loaned me, with interest. But more than the money, I felt like I owed her everything. She had seen me at my lowest point and hadn't run away. She had invested in me when I had nothing to offer. I was determined to spend the rest of my life making sure she knew how grateful I was. For the past 2.5 years, I have tried to be the perfect boyfriend. I work overtime regularly to afford nice things for her. I have paid for expensive vacations, jewelry, designer clothes, whatever she wants. When she decided to go back to school for her master's degree, I offered to cover her tuition. When she wanted to quit her job to focus on her studies full-time, I told her I would support us both financially. I thought I was showing my appreciation and building a future together. But lately, I am starting to feel like something is wrong. Camille has become increasingly demanding and critical. Nothing I do seems to be good enough anymore. When I surprise her with gifts, she complains that I didn't pick the right style or brand. When I plan romantic dates, she says they are not creative enough compared to what other couples do. Last month, I worked 65 hours a week to afford a weekend getaway to Napa Valley that she had been wanting. Instead of being grateful, she spent the entire trip comparing our hotel to the luxury resort where her friend had stayed with her boyfriend. Maybe you need to work harder if you want to treat me the way I deserve. It hurt, but I told myself she was just stressed about school and didn't mean to be ungrateful. But the pattern has been getting worse. She has started making comments about my appearance, my social skills, and my career prospects. She compares me unfavorably to her male friends and classmates, always finding ways to point out how I am lacking in comparison. Elias just got promoted to senior manager at his company, she will say. He is only a year older than you. Maybe you should be more ambitious. Elias is her ex-boyfriend from college. They dated for 2 years before breaking up when he moved across the country for work. He moved back to our city about 8 months ago, and since then, Camille brings him up in conversation constantly. I know they have reconnected as friends. She has told me they text occasionally and that they have grabbed coffee a few times to catch up. When I have expressed discomfort about this, she gets defensive. He is an important person in my life, she says. Just because we are dating doesn't mean I have to cut ties with everyone from my past. Besides, after everything I have done for you, don't you think you owe me some trust? That phrase, after everything I have done for you, comes up a lot in our conversations now. Whenever I try to express concerns about our relationship or ask for changes, she reminds me of how she supported me during my difficult period. I was there for you when no one else would be. she will say. I invested in you when you had nothing. The least you can do is support my friendships and trust my judgment. The thing is, she is not wrong. I do owe her everything. Without her help, I might have ended up homeless or dead. How can I complain about her behavior when she saved my life? But I am exhausted. I work constantly to afford the lifestyle she expects, and nothing I do makes her happy. I feel like I am performing in our relationship rather than living in it. My brother pulled me aside last week and said he is worried about me. You look miserable, man. When is the last time you did something for yourself instead of trying to impress Camille? I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. My friend Jake has been more direct. Dude, she is using you. Yeah. She helped you out when you were down, but that doesn't give her the right to treat you like a personal ATM for the rest of your life. But is it that simple? Can you really put a timeline on gratitude? If someone saves your life, don't you owe them something permanent in return? I love Camille, or at least I think I do. It is hard to tell the difference between love and gratitude anymore, but I know I cannot imagine life without her. Partly because Qley in her would feel like the ultimate betrayal. After everything she has done for me, am I being manipulated, or am I just struggling to balance gratitude with my own needs? How do you navigate a relationship that started with such an unequal power dynamic? Update 1. Over the past few weeks, I have been observing Camille's behavior more carefully, and what I have discovered has been devastating. First, the extent of her contact with Elias is much more than she has been admitting. She is not just texting him occasionally, she is in constant communication with him throughout the day. I know this because her phone is always buzzing with notifications, and I have seen his name pop up repeatedly on her screen. When she gets messages from him, her entire demeanor changes. She gets this little smile and becomes completely absorbed in her phone for several minutes at a time, typing long responses. When I have asked casually what they talk about so much, she says they are just catching up on old times and that I am being paranoid. But the real revelation came 2 weeks ago. Camille told me she was having a girls' night with her study group and would be home late. I was working on a project in my home office when I realized I had forgotten to charge my laptop, so I went to grab Camille's charger from our bedroom. Her laptop was open on the bed, and she had left her messages app visible. I know I shouldn't have looked, but Elias's name was right there at the top of her recent conversations. What I saw made me sick. They weren't just catching up as friends. They were flirting heavily, sharing intimate memories from their past relationship, and making plans to meet privately. The most recent message thread was from that very evening. She wasn't at a study group at all. She was meeting Elias for drinks. But the worst part was reading her complaints about me. She had told Elias that she felt trapped in our relationship because I was so grateful and dependent that leaving me would be like kicking a wounded puppy. He works so hard to make me happy that it is almost pathetic, she had written. I know he will do whatever I ask because he thinks he owes me his life. It is exhausting being someone's whole world. Elias had responded. You deserve someone who is with you because they want to be, not because they feel obligated. You have done your good deed, you saved the guy's life. That doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your own happiness forever. Camille's reply, I know. But he is so devoted and he pays for everything I want. It is hard to give up that kind of security, especially while I am in school. Maybe after I graduate and get established in my career, I will have more options. She was using me for financial support while emotionally cheating with her ex, and she was planning to leave me once she no longer needed my money. I closed the laptop and went back to my office, but I couldn't concentrate on work. I spent the next 3 hours replaying our entire relationship, trying to figure out when her genuine care had turned into manipulation, or if it had ever been genuine at all. When Camille came home around midnight, she told me about her great evening with the girls and how much studying they had gotten done together. She kissed my cheek and went to shower, humming like she had had the most wonderful time. I should have confronted her immediately. I should have demanded explanations and set boundaries. Instead, I have spent the past 2 weeks in a weird state of paralysis, watching our relationship with new eyes, but unable to act on what I know. The psychological hold she has on me through gratitude is stronger than I realized. Even knowing that she is using me and planning to leave me eventually, I keep thinking about how I would probably be dead without her help. How can I be angry at someone who saved my life? How can I leave someone who invested in me when I had nothing? Intellectually, I understand that I am being used. Emotionally, I still feel like I owe her everything, and that questioning her behavior makes me an ungrateful person. Meanwhile, Camille has become even more demanding. Last week, she decided she wants to go to Europe this summer and expects me to pay for a 3-week trip. When I hesitated because of the cost, she said, "After everything I have sacrificed for this relationship, don't you think I deserve a nice vacation?" She has also been more critical of my appearance and social skills. Yesterday, she suggested I should dress better because she is embarrassed to be seen with someone who shops at Target instead of Nordstrom. Every conversation feels like a transaction now. She provides minimal affection, and I provide maximum financial support, with the implicit understanding that I should be grateful for whatever attention she gives me. I know I need to leave. I know this relationship is destroying my self-worth and financial stability. But every time I think about confronting her, I remember how she held my hand in the hospital emergency room, and how she never hesitated to help me when I was at my lowest point. Update 2. Last weekend, Camille was hosting a small gathering at our apartment for some of her graduate school friends. I was working late in my office, but I could hear their conversation from the living room as I finished up some projects. Initially, I was just trying to focus on work, but I started paying attention when I heard my name mentioned. The conversation that followed completely shattered whatever remaining illusions I had about our relationship. One of Camille's friends, Sarah, was asking about our future plans. "You and Gideon seem so stable," she said. "Are you thinking about marriage soon?" Camille's laugh was bitter. "Marriage? God, no. I mean, Gideon is sweet, and he works hard to take care of me, but I am not going to spend my life with someone I feel sorry for." Another friend asked what she meant. "When I met Gideon, he was basically a charity case," Camille said. "Unemployed, sick, broke, completely pathetic. I helped him get back on his feet because I felt bad for him, and now he is so grateful that he will do anything I ask. It is kind of sad, honestly." "So why are you still with him?" Sarah asked. "Because he is useful," Camille said matter-of-factly. "He pays for everything I want, works overtime to afford my lifestyle, and never complains because he thinks he owes me his life. It is like having a devoted servant who is genuinely happy to serve you." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach, but I kept listening. "Plus," Camille continued, "I am back in touch with Elias now. You remember Elias from college? He is successful, attractive, confident, everything I actually want in a partner. We have been reconnecting, and I think things might work out between us again once I graduate, and don't need Gideon's financial support anymore." "Aren't you worried about hurting Gideon?" another friend asked. "It sounds like he really loves you." "He doesn't love me," Camille said. "He loves the idea of me, or maybe he loves what he thinks I did for him. But it is not real love. It is just gratitude and dependency. If I were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, he would probably find another woman to worship within 6 months." Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "The truth is, I stopped caring about Gideon romantically about a year ago. Now I just stay with him because leaving would feel like kicking a disabled puppy. He is so pathetic and grateful that I cannot bring myself to crush him completely." Her friends were quiet for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with her callousness. "You are wasting both of your lives." I sat in my office for another hour after her friends left, trying to process what I had heard. The woman I had been worshiping and sacrificing for viewed me as a pathetic charity case who was too grateful and dependent to deserve real love. When I finally went to the living room, Camille was cleaning up from the party. She smiled at me like nothing had happened. "How was work?" she asked. "Did you get your projects finished?" I looked at her for a long moment, trying to reconcile the person standing in front of me with the woman who had just described me as a pathetic servant she kept around out of pity. "I heard your conversation with your friends," I said quietly. Her face went white, then immediately shifted to defensive anger. "You were eavesdropping on a private conversation," she demanded. "How dare you spy on me in my own home?" I told her that it wasn't spying when she was having the conversation 10 feet away from where I was working, and that I had heard every word she had said about me. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms. "So you heard me being honest with my friends. Would you rather I lie about our situation? I asked her if she really saw me as nothing more than a useful servant she kept around out of pity. Gideon, she said with exaggerated patience, you are a sweet guy who works hard and treats me well. But let's be realistic about what this relationship is. You were a mess when we met, and I helped you get your life together. You are grateful for that, and you show your gratitude by taking care of me financially and emotionally. She spoke like she was explaining something obvious to a child. That is not love, she continued. That is a transaction, and it has worked well for both of us. You get to feel like you are repaying your debt to me, and I get to live the lifestyle I want while finishing school. I asked her about Elias and her plans to leave me once she graduated. She didn't even try to deny it. Elias and I have history and chemistry that you and I never had. We connect on an intellectual and emotional level that you cannot provide. Once I am financially independent, yes, I will probably pursue something real with him. What we have isn't real, I asked. What we have is comfortable, she said. But comfort isn't the same as love. I care about your well-being, but I am not in love with you. I thought you understood that. The casual cruelty in her voice was devastating. This woman I had been willing to sacrifice everything for had just confirmed that she had never seen me as anything more than a grateful puppy who paid her bills. I told her I wanted her to move out. Don't be dramatic, she said. So I was honest about our dynamic with my friends. That doesn't change anything about how we operate day to day. I told her that it changed everything for me, that I finally understood I had been living in a fantasy where I thought grateful devotion could turn into mutual love. Gideon, she said, using the same tone she would use with a tantruming toddler, you are overreacting. Where else are you going to find someone who accepts you despite your neediness and medical issues? Who else is going to put up with your grateful puppy routine? That was the moment something finally broke inside me. You are right, I said. I have been acting like a grateful puppy. But puppies eventually grow into dogs. And dogs have enough self-respect to leave when they are not wanted. I told her she had 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. Final update first. The immediate aftermath of my confrontation with Camille. She spent the next few days cycling through every manipulation technique in the book to try to get me to change my mind about ending our relationship. Initially, she tried denial and gaslighting. She claimed I would misunderstood what she had said to her friends, and that she had been venting about stress rather than expressing her true feelings. When I quoted her exact words back to her, she said I was taking things out of context and being deliberately hurtful by throwing her private conversation in her face. When that didn't work, she switched to guilt and emotional manipulation. She reminded me of all the ways she had supported me during my medical crisis, how she had sacrificed for our relationship, and how ungrateful I was being after everything she had done for me. I saved your life, she said during one particularly intense argument. I was there when no one else would be. How can you throw that away over a few careless words? I said to my friends. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull of guilt and obligation that had kept me trapped for so long. But then I remembered her describing me as a pathetic charity case and a devoted servant, and I realized that her past kindness didn't give her a license to exploit me indefinitely. When guilt didn't work, she tried bargaining. She promised to cut contact with Elias, to be more appreciative of my efforts, to contribute more financially to our household. She even suggested we go to couples therapy to work through our communication issues. Finally, when nothing else worked, she resorted to threats. She said she would tell our mutual friends that I would mentally abused her and that I had taken advantage of her generosity when I was sick. She threatened to demand repayment of money she had spent on me during our relationship. Money I had already paid back with interest years ago. None of it worked. Hearing her true feelings had finally broken the psychological chains that gratitude had wrapped around my mind. Camille moved out 2 weeks after our confrontation. She went to stay with Elias, which confirmed what I had suspected about their relationship. She left behind most of the expensive gifts I had bought her over the years, along with a note saying she couldn't bear to be reminded of how much I had disappointed her. The weeks immediately following her departure were emotionally complicated. On one hand, I felt an enormous sense of relief and freedom. My apartment felt like my own space again. I could make decisions about my time and money without wondering how they would affect Camille's mood or expectations. On the other hand, I had to confront the reality of how much of myself I had lost during our relationship. I would become so focused on earning Camille's approval and demonstrating my gratitude that I had forgotten who I was as an individual person with my own needs and preferences. More importantly, she helped me recognize that genuine love and support don't come with strings attached. When someone truly cares about you, they don't use their past kindness as leverage to control your behavior or extract ongoing payments of gratitude. Real love wants the best for you, my therapist explained. It doesn't require you to diminish yourself or sacrifice your well-being to prove your worthiness.